doing that, I was face to face with it. It was holding me by my throat, and it felt like it was sucking something out of me.
I probably should have been more scared than I was when I witnessed the exorcism.
I turned and looked on my right side. When I did, there's a beam on the side of the tree, a large beam. It's looking at me and I'm looking at it.
After I hit the lock button and looked back up, I saw red eyes staring back at me.
That they're going to show multiple gods all over the earth, be able to speak in people's languages, and at that point, it kind of converge into this one entity, which will be revealed as extraterrestrial. You'll realize that aliens are the gods of old, and at that point, it'll wipe religion out of the context of humanity.
No, it couldn't have been a person, I know that. I know that people can't run through the woods like that.
So this thing comes into view, and I see it. It's 50 yards away from me. It's walking on two legs. It's huge. This is a big, hairy looking being.
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is uNcomfortable. Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Slodgy. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it featured on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. Please make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And most importantly, please share the show with others and make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review where you can. This is the main way that you can help get this show out in front of more people. There's a couple of events coming up that I'm going to be a part of. First will be the second annual Bigfoot Brews held in Dowagiac, Michigan, this September 9th. This is in honor of the Dewey Lake monster sighting from way back in 1964. This year, Robert Kreider from New Mexico and Mr. Stacy Brown Jr. from Florida will be the main speakers for the day. Tickets are available. Seating is limited, so if you're interested, I would suggest picking up those tickets as soon as you can. I want to let you know that the Friday night before, at the same venue, we will be holding a VIP dinner, which will be a screening of Stacy Brown Jr.'s latest installments of the Skunk Ape Experiment. Both gentlemen will be on hand for the dinner, and then afterwards, we'll be viewing all 4 episodes of his newest project. Tickets are on sale now. I am looking for vendors, so if you're interested, please check out the vendor ticket on the Eventbrite link in the show notes below. Also, if you are interested in helping sponsor this event, please contact me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. Just about a month later, October 7th, actually the whole weekend, including the evening of October 6th, all day on the 7th, and the morning of the 8th, you will be able to join myself, Justin and Jay from the Cryptids of the Corn, Steve and Kyle from the Hollow Sky podcast, Chris and Joel from the Kill a Mockingbirds podcast, Ryan, Justin, and Lance from the Appalachian Intelligence podcast, and now Bo Kennedy from the Bump podcast at the first Fortean Airwaves podcast conference. $50 is the cost per ticket per person for this event. That gets you access to all of us all 3 days. Starting the evening of the 6th, we will have a Friday night meet and greet, an impromptu panel in the courtyard at the Inn in Ada, Ohio. Then, starting bright and early, Saturday morning, you will have access to all of the show's vendors' tables where you can pick up your t-shirts, stickers, and other merch from your favorite podcasts. And then that whole day will be filled with each one of these podcasts taking the stage to do their thing. The end to Saturday's events will be a planned panel discussion with Q&A with the audience. Then Sunday morning, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do something really nice for you. We're going to head down the road just a few minutes, and we are going to provide you with a bon voyage pancake breakfast before we see you off on your way home. as a nice little way of just saying thanks for spending your weekend with us. Again, that's $50. That gets you all 3 days. There will be a link tree in the show notes below this episode. The links have the conference center, the special pricing for the rooms, alternative lodging if you don't want to stay there. It's a one-of-a-kind opportunity for you, the listeners, to hang out with us and just let the weird hang out all weekend, man. So please check out the show notes, get those links, and if you're interested, please take part. If you've not heard yet, Uncomfortable Patreon is launched. I'm very excited about it. It's the only place you can find my video series, Uncomfortable Afterthoughts and A Little Uncomfortable. Go to patreon.com/uncomfortablepodcast770 and see if any of the tiers interest you there. Your support of the show has been amazing over the past few years, and I am hopeful that this is going to be a nice way for me to give back for all that support. The link for the Patreon and the Uncomfortable Discord will be in the show notes below as well. As for tonight's guest, this is Scott's second appearance on Uncomfortable. Scott is the proprietor of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. Last year, he was featured in a very, very good documentary called A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. If you're familiar with this project, his project, you'll know that his Instagram is constantly putting up maps of different states and different segments of data collected on Bigfoot, sightings, reports. I've wanted to have Scott back on since the first episode that we did together. And then just recently, probably within the last week or two, I saw his later post on the Michigan Byways. And I figured that's my sign. Time to get this guy back on. So if you're ready, let's get into it. If you would, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to tonight's guest, Mr. Scott Tompkins of the Bigfoot Mapping Project. Scott, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Hi, Eric. Great to be back.
Great to have you, my friend.
It's just been fun catching up before the show and sharing all the news and hearing some of your stories about things you've covered in other past episodes and sightings and just all the stuff that's been going on. It's I can't believe it's been so long already since I was on last time. It goes so fast.
It does. It really does. And the older you get, the faster it goes. So
you're telling me.
you told me beforehand, before we started recording, that you are expecting a new member to the family. So congratulations on that. And if I can give you any kind of advice, it is cherish every moment, even the ones that keep you up in the middle of the night. Because, man, the older you get, the faster it goes. And before you know, you're going to blink and it's like, holy crap, what happened? So congratulations to you and your wife on that.
Thank you.
Listen, you know what? I had a great time recording with you last time. You got a great personality. You carry a show really well. I think back in the last time I told you, you ought to probably try to think about doing one of these on your own.
I remember that.
So listen, you know, it's funny how things kind of are synchronistic. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before you actually entered into the studio here. I was sitting in the studio, I was getting everything set and ready for you. And my neighbor, he's having a new siding put onto his house. And I have no problem with the hammering and the nails. I mean, everybody's got to have their thing, you know, they got to do, they got to work somehow. But they had the music turned up in the backyard and it was a little loud. I don't particularly mind that, but it seemed like it was coming right through my air conditioner in the studio. And it sounded like the music was playing right there. So I went outside and I said, hey guys, I'm not trying to be an ass or anything, but I said, I'm getting ready to record an episode of a podcast. And could you please turn the music down some because it's really kind of filling the studio. And they were very nice about it. They said, yeah. And the one older gentleman, I'd guess him, you know, maybe in his early mid 60s, great shape. God, I wish I was in good a shape as that guy was. He says, what do you podcast about? And I said, paranormal stuff. Bigfoot, UFOs, haunting, stuff like that. And in the most matter-of-fact kind of way, he's like, I saw a Bigfoot as he's walking away. And I was like, excuse me? and he says, yeah, I saw a Bigfoot. And I said, can I ask where? And he's like, up north, 1972. And I was like, holy crap, what? And he was in the Huron-Manistee National Forest.
And that's one of the places in getting ready for the show that I had come up with as like a hot spot for Michigan too. So, I mean, there you have it, right? That's just, I wish that was in the map, that sighting.
Yeah. So, it's kind of crazy how things kind of synchronistically always tend to come together. But right outside my back wall of my studio, there's a guy that saw one, back in 1972. He says, well, now I know where you live. So if I see another one, I'm coming to talk to you.
Knocking. Yeah. Pun intended, right?
Yeah. So Scott, I got to tell you, about a year ago, sometime during 2022, a new documentary came out, A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And I went into it. I got it the day it came out. Not knowing anything about it, hoping and praying that it was going to be of good content. Not all of them are, as you might be aware.
Fully aware.
There's some really, really bad ones out there, but this one I thought was really well done. You had a nice feature in there. You were in there with Ron Moorhead, who spoke at Bigfoot Brews last year for me. You were in there with Jeff Meldrum and a number of other people. Really well done. Till it got to the end.
They cut that part out.
And then I watched it again, and that part was missing.
Yep.
And so my son and I did a watch party of that. He was in Grand Rapids. I was down here, and we watched it together. And when it got to the end of this portion that we're talking about, I was like, I don't think so. And he's like, I freaking know that face. And within a couple of minutes, he had gone to one of these Party City websites or whatever, and pulled up the exact same mask. He sent me the picture. I put it into Photoshop. I blurred it a little bit. I turned it, and then I put it next to a screenshot from that I took off the TV from watching the show, turned it to the same angle, and then made it the same size. Mm-hmm. And it was a dead match. Mm-hmm. And inside of like 20 minutes, we had that thing busted, and we're like, holy crap, this was a great show. Why the hell would they put that in at the end? And then I watched it again, and it was completely taken out.
Yes. I actually, I don't know if you had a chance in doing your research about that, but they have a Facebook post where they address that. And I can't remember the exact wording, but knowing the director, Brett, and Jill, from behind the scenes, and we correspond, I can say that I am confident that what they put in that documentary, they believe, and there must have been more going on behind the scenes for them. I admire the fact that they addressed it publicly and adjusted their documentary to reflect learning, right? They might have, I don't know the full story, but I do know them, and they are quality people. They're not out there to skew or make things up. So something must have slipped through or convinced them that was real footage for them to include it. And then they learned more and addressed it, and they openly addressed it publicly. So,
well, kudos to them for that. The only thing that I did see Jeff Meldrum had, I don't remember if it was a video segment or a post, where he did draw some concerns about the addition of that. That was the only thing that I had seen.
I think it was in response to that, actually, that they I can't remember what they said, but I'll happily after the show go find it, because I remember reading it.
Yeah.
And I also remember reading what Dr. Meldrum posted, and I think it was not long after that the documentary was adjusted. So, but I will say again, in terms of character, there was nothing that gave me concern, and clearly nothing about Ron Moorhead was in there. Everyone that met with the director Brett and everybody, they are quality, good people. So I am more than inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody sometimes gets caught up in things or whatever the case may be. I can speak to their character for sure. They're great people. In fact, I just had another on Saturday. I met with them and did a podcast, and it just came out on Monday. So it's in kind of a recap of what's happened between that documentary and now. And we talked about they had some questions about different things. I won't spoil everything, but we caught up, and that didn't even come up, to be honest. I can imagine. I didn't think to ask about it or anything either.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd put them on the spot on a podcast about that either. But
well, no, like I said, kudos to them for making the adjustment and re-releasing it without that footage. I think that speaks volumes of just what you're getting at, the type of people that they are. Aside from that, that was a really well done documentary. It was good. It really was.
It's artfully done. And it's got great information. They stay on point and they weave the narrative with facts very well. I am still impressed. And again, I mean, I'm glad that they made the edit, because that didn't do the rest of the documentary justice.
Right. Any idea on how well it's performed?
Actually, I don't know. I have no idea. I know that they made enough to make a sequel. I will say that there's a sequel coming out.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
I was going to ask. That's awesome.
That's all. I'm not, in the loop on that. I'm just on the periphery, I guess. But they are coming out with a sequel, and I won't spoil anything, but I will say the trailer, which I have seen before it's released. That's one perk, I guess. Looks great. It looks great. So I'm curious.
I assume you're in it again.
No, not in the film, not yet. Anyway, I just did the interview that was following up, so in preparation. So the interview may be in there. I don't really know. Yeah. But I was happy to catch up with those guys regardless. Yeah,
it's a very good show, very good, well done, and it ranks up there with the best of the ones that I've seen anyway.
I agree.
And I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of bad ones.
My algorithm is forever scarred with Bigfoot. The algorithm, it just serves up everything. Yeah. So
you can turn on any streaming service I have, and last watched, suggested for you, everything is either UFO related, Bigfoot related, or ghost stories. It's ridiculous. I mean,
same. I go to sleep watching haunting shows. So most people might get freaked out by them. I go to sleep with them.
Comforting.
It's my wheelhouse, right?
Yeah. So Scott, what's been going on with the Bigfoot Mapping Project since we talked last? How's it doing?
It's doing well. Lots have going on. When was the last time? Almost a year ago, was it?
I think it's been a little over a year.
Wow, time flies. Then a lot has been going on. One of my favorite things that I've done in the past year, as far as putting information out there, is this corridor series that I've done nationally with many of the states that have a significant number of Bigfoot sightings. And I hope we get a lot more into that further into the show.
We will.
I'm good. I'm looking forward to this. Is going to be a unique show. I think it's the first time I've ever done what we were discussing, where we're going to kind of get into a live workshop, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's been a lot of work, and I've kind of piggybacked on some of the green infrastructure data that Esri has provided and used it in a different way to show how Bigfoot sightings and occurrences intersect with real, verified, documented wildlife corridors. So that's a big one. I've been promoting that. There's a whole series. If you look at the Instagram, that's pretty much all you're going to see until you scroll down. As far as other exciting things, there's a few. It's funny. I didn't talk about this in the pre-show with you, but I don't know what to call it, and perhaps maybe you can give me some advice, or the viewers can. But what I'm working on is creating, I call it like Bigfoot sessions, where I talk with, or try to talk with, people who are not necessarily in the community, but who are experts in their field, biologists, anthropologists, archaeologists, et cetera, and try to bring in, kind of like what I'm doing, where I'm a GIS guy who's extremely interested in Bigfoot, and I apply my expertise to the field, and extrapolating on that idea, I want to convince people who might not be in the field and might not even have any interest to talk about how they would apply their different expertise to the study of Bigfoot. And I want to do that in a way that I can share with people through an interview type platform, but maybe not weekly or bi-weekly. It's basically, as I get access to these people, I would bring them into the fold. Basically, yeah, it's where I wouldn't say I'm trying to make them believers. I just want to learn from them and share what they do in parallel studies, et cetera, and share that kind of perspective with the Bigfoot community, so that maybe we can bring in new techniques, new ways of looking at things through a different lens, and take it from new voices, right? People that we, because I mean, there is a community and there are a lot of the same people talking about things. So anytime you can bring new voices in is always, I'm a new voice, I would say. I haven't been around very much, right? So, and I hope to make it an impact. And I think bringing other new voices in can only help. So it's through my experience, I kind of had that idea, and it's in incubation right now, I would say. I think it's a great idea. And, you know, I agree with you. You know, you can go to a Bigfoot conference on the West Coast. You can go to one, you know, in Colorado. You can go to one in Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and or as far down as the Smoky Mountains or down into Florida. And you're going to see the people that were on Finding Bigfoot, Cliff Barrickman, Bobo, you know, great folks, by the way. Yeah, they're great. You're going to see Jeff Meldrum. You're going to see all these, this small pool of people who are very recognized and respected in the field of talking about Bigfoot. But, and there's a big but here. So these people, when they speak, they're speaking on they're leaning on a crutch of science, and it's understandable. You know, Jeff Meldrum is using the anthropology and the anatomy of the foot to, you know, dissect and create his theories on this makes sense for the size of a creature that would be having these kind of prints, and this is how the foot bends and all that stuff. And that's all great and it's wonderful. But they're the only people that are out there that are using this science to lean against. You have hundreds, thousands of people who are having experiences, and they don't have the science crutch to lean on. So their explanations for things are more emotional. They're more anecdotal, anecdotal, and it's out of fear, or it's out of how everything was presented to them when they were having their encounter, you know? So I think it's important to have science as a part of this conversation. And the only problem is that the only science that we're getting is the same people who are in the science for years and years now, you know? So bring other people in
who are not necessarily a part of the culture, not part of the community, that you can get to talk and speak on the subject. I think it's a brilliant way to get additional information.
I hope so. And it would be, I wouldn't be trying to nail down their opinion. It would be more a conversation of a hypothetical. They may or may not believe in Bigfoot or think it exists, but if we were to get them involved, how would they take this approach? What would they do that we might not be thinking about or implementing in the way that we approach as a community the field of Bigfoot research? There's always kind of a way to disrupt, and I think just we haven't found Bigfoot yet, right? So in a fully documented, widely accepted way.
Right.
So maybe we should evaluate some of the ways we're doing things and welcome some new perspectives. And I feel like through my own experience, the entire community is extremely welcoming and open-minded and positive. And I've only had a great experience, yourself included, where people are very nice and interested in what we're doing, have great feedback, great constructive criticism, want to see you do well. So I think that they would devour some new information, perhaps,
Absolutely.
coming at them that way. So that's just one thing that I've been working on. It's hard to come up with a name and a theme song, and that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
But a couple other things. I'm going to release a new version of the web app. I've been so if you haven't seen very many maps on the Instagram lately, I've been working behind the scenes on building a new web app on a new platform called Experience Builder through ArcGIS Online, which has a lot more features. It's a lot smoother. It's a lot faster on mobile. So I've been, it's been 2 years now since I've updated the mobile app as well. So it's about time. There's a lot more functionality that I can introduce. So I've really been putting a lot of thought and work into making the web application, especially, more of an analysis tool than just a viewer tool, where you can go select an area, see the sightings, filter data, that kind of stuff, and introduce that other than just a viewing platform. So I think that really I need to live up to what I want the project to be, and ignoring the new functionality really won't advance it anyway. So I've put a lot of time into starting to build that, and it's I would say it's 50% there. I won't release it unless it's quality. So we're 50% there, and probably a little harder on myself than most people are. So a little bit of a perfectionist, I would say.
Well, that's a good trait to have. No doubt about it. Again, it's the Bigfoot Mapping Project. I have the app on my phone. I can't tell you the number of times that I have just, whether it was looking for something specific, whether it was looking just to peruse through, and it's very affordable. What are you at?
$1.99. So keeps the lights on for well under a cup of coffee. One time, there's no advertisements. It's not a subscription. But it really does help pay for the platform I use, the software I use, website fees, domain, etc. You name it. Everything that comes in through the app definitely and more goes into the Bigfoot Mapping Project. So it's every little bit helps.
So I highly recommend it if you have an interest in this subject and you want a quick and easy reference, no matter what state you're in, of looking up and finding what the most recent sightings are, sightings from the past, hot spots. It's a super, super easy app to use, and you can get a ton of information out of it.
Even other countries,
it's great.
In
you
Europe,
did a great job.
To add to your point, we're international now. We've got some sightings and reports in Australia, Africa,
nice.
Europe. Yeah, we're just missing South America.
I did not realize that.
Yes, sir. If you zoom out, you can get on over to the rest of the world.
I'll be damn. Yeah, you're right.
Yes, sir. It's a little hidden secret.
Not that I doubted you, but that's awesome.
Little Easter egg. You can kind of go see learn about the Yowie in Australia. That's where we probably have the most other sightings. I'm trying to expand to outside the U.S. I think actually this is a good segue, touching on just the kind of phenomenon, and we were talking about the community in the United States. Bigfoot is mainly the way it's been embraced seems to me to be a very North American phenomenon in the way that it's entered mainstream culture and
pop culture.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so. I mean, just think of all the places you see it, and the little stickers on cars everywhere. And
Uncomfortable is pleased to have BetterHelp sponsoring this episode. 10 years ago, I found myself in the midst of something I never expected. I was in crisis. I needed help. I knew I needed to talk to someone, but my pride and my embarrassment of having to ask for help kept me from seeking in-person therapy. Had BetterHelp existed back then, it would have made a world of difference to me. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you will tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and your preferences in therapy. Then, BetterHelp will match you with the right therapist from their network. You can then talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone call, or even video call. You'll be able to message your therapist at any time and schedule live sessions when it's convenient for you. If for any reason your therapist isn't the right fit, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you'll get the same professionalism and quality that you would expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, with more scheduling flexibility and a more affordable price. With this offer, get 10% off on your first month at betterhelp.com/uncomfortablepodcast23. That's betterhelp.com/uncomfortablepodcast23.
One of the things, same. They're all my stickers. Guilty. But one of the things that I would like to do with the project is get outside of the bounds of pop culture in the U.S. and really start to bring in reports from other countries where people might not be motivated by notoriety or not that everybody is by any means, but I just think that it would bring a new aspect into the database where those reports are have a different motivation, right? So
a little bit different filter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and it's also interesting what people from different countries and cultures observe and how they understand things. So reading about what people in Asia, for example, or Australia or Europe, what they observe from their perspective and how they describe things will be interesting. And it will also be interesting to learn about Bigfoot behaviors, Yowie behaviors, whatever the local name is, and perhaps understand whether there's truly different species like the orang pendek, the Yeren, all those types of things. So going international, I think, is a very important part of understanding Bigfoot and in full context, as opposed to just in the context of the U.S. and North America as well.
Absolutely, I agree. You're doing a great job. It is
I don't even describe it. I don't think of it as a job. This is fun. This is a passion project for sure.
I'm we all use apps on our phone. I mean, whatever it may be, but I mean, as far as a pocket caddy for information when it comes to Bigfoot, I mean, I've had people message me, hey, have you had any, of anybody that may have seen one around so-and-so area? And that's the first thing I go to. That's the first thing I go to. And it's like, actually, you know what? There were 3 sightings, back in the 70s or the early 80s, in that area. So it's great. And, for $1.99, you just can't beat what you get out of it. So I highly recommend it.
Thank you for helping me get it out there. I don't do that well enough. That's one thing. I'd rather stay behind the keyboard. So self-promotion is a weakness of mine. So
that's what we're here for.
Thank you.
No problem. So getting back to the state of Michigan. So as I told you before we started recording, I'm hosting Bigfoot Brews for the second year in a row. And that is in southwestern Michigan, Dowagiac area. And back in 1964, it's the home of the Dewey Lake Monster sighting. Pretty much an entire summer worth of several sightings. And basically, when you boil it down, the sightings, the reports that were in the paper describe something that was 7 to 9 feet tall, covered in hair, at times appeared to be soaking wet, and appeared to have some sort of lake vegetation in its hair. But nonetheless, basically was describing a Bigfoot. Somebody in the town announced, I think it was a liquor distributor, announced $1,000 bounty on it, and the town was inundated with cars and trucks full of people with baseball bats, shotguns, mosquito nets, anything that they could try to capture this thing, to the point where the police made them take the bounty down because it was creating so much havoc in the town. The brewery that I'm hosting Bigfoot Brews at is literally about 1.5 miles away from the very first sighting of this creature. And later on that year, later on that next year, in the early months of 1965, in Monroe, Michigan, which is directly east, on the east side of the state, almost in a straight line from the Dowagiac area, there was a report that came out that was the Monroe Monster. Basically, exactly the same report. Actually reached in a moving car, and actually caused some damage to a young girl's face, leaving her with a black eye. So in my episode 2 and 3, I interviewed a gentleman who hunts a piece of property that is east of Dowagiac, about, as the crow flies, probably a 30-minute drive. Had one walk out in front of him on opening day about 9 years ago. So I start putting these things together in my head, and I'm like, okay, you had 1964, you had it over in Dowagiac, and then 9 years ago, I got a guy who has one experience with one, directly east of that. And then in 1965, there's another one, in east of that. And I'm starting to think to myself, it's like, okay, so is there a corridor? Is there a corridor that they're using?
In my mind, yeah.
That, that these things are traveling. And here we go. You post a Instagram picture of the state of Michigan with what you call the byways. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're here to talk about. So from here on out, man, this is your show. So let's do your thing.
Bigfoot byways. Yes. So I will, before we dive into the map, I will explain what we're talking about, so the viewers and listeners are prepped, and I'll do my best to for folks that are going to listen on the podcast without being able to see the map while we're going through things. I'll be as descriptive as possible, because I want them to get just as much out of it as anybody watching. So
and let me jump in here real quick and say that for the listeners on the audio end of things, I am going to post this video interview on YouTube. So you will be able, if you really want to see the screen shares from Scott, it's going to be in the video, and that episode will be uploaded onto YouTube.
Yeah, this is a bit different than some of the interviews I've done, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So this is kind of more what's the word? Like I said before, like a workshop where we're actually going to do some analysis live. And the first place I kind of want to go look is the lake, like you were saying. I really do want to look in that area. I think since you told that story, we can maybe start there. Mm-hmm. So I'll describe the map first. And what we're going to see is these habitat cores, they're called. And the way they're displayed on the map is called habitat cores by betweenness. So as opposed to just big green areas that facilitate wildlife, these are going to look like funnels or pipelines because they're symbolized and displayed based on their betweenness relationship to each other. So you're going to see different values, darker with a higher value, which is a better, higher betweenness score than the lighter area. So that's going to be the area that's going to funnel the most wildlife, basically, is what we're going to see. The darkest area equals the highest value. Funnel the most wildlife is the greenest area is what we're going to look at. And it's literally, when I say the greenest area, it's literally the greenest area with the highest green infrastructure value, right? So that's what this data set is meant for. It's meant to help developers maintain and have the least impact on the environment. So Esri put a lot of time and money into this. And the study, I think it's a great study and data set in general. But what I've done is taken it a little out of context. I don't think they ever thought when they made this data set that somebody would pick it up and use it to identify pathways and corridors that Bigfoot uses to travel. Right. But when I saw it, I instantly went to one of the main features of the data set, which I think is the most useful, is something called a least cost pathway, or like a connector. And what those are the corridors that have the least resistance for wildlife between these hubs, these environmental hubs. So that is how wildlife travels, and why that's important to green infrastructure is you don't want to disrupt that, right? So when you're building roads and things like that, developers will look at, okay, where's the most wildlife traveling? What's the heaviest area? How can we responsibly develop and maybe make a land bridge, or not put a 6-lane highway there or anything like that, or build a big office, develop a big commercial area, things like that, so that hopefully looking forward, we can live in balance with wildlife and human progress, which I believe in both. We can responsibly do that. We have the technology and information to be able to do that. So with that qualifier,
before you bring up that map, you're talking a lot of sciencey stuff.
I apologize.
No, that's fine. But people might be wondering, how the hell do you know all this stuff? So if you can, give them a real quick refresher on what you do for your day job.
Oh, sure. So my background, I have a degree in GIS from State University of New York at Cortland. I'm sure they also have never been shouted out in a Bigfoot podcast, which is I'm happy to be the first, hopefully. And with that, what I got into right out of school was geophysical exploration. So seismic exploration, doing field testing, finding and analyzing the geology of the earth for oil and gas development, fault analysis, all different types of salt domes, carbon capture, you name it. And what I do now is data management for a geophysical company for my day job. The Bigfoot Mapping Project, regrettably, is not getting 100% of my time, especially with a baby on the way. I've got to pay the bills. So I do geophysical work and I love it. But the passion I carry for the Bigfoot Mapping Project is what I apply a lot of my creative energy to, and really find all these data sets. And to your question, or to your point, what I try to do is take information that people might not even know exists, or how to digest it, how to access it, might not have the software to do anything with it, and put it in front of people in a way that is that communicates something, rather than just dumping all this scientific stuff, kind of like I was before, maybe a little verbal diarrhea there, where I was just rattling off all these terms. I'm glad you stopped me. What I'm trying to do.
No, I just wanted people to understand that what you were speaking on is stuff that you were very well versed in.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 15 years.
Because your degrees and your life experience, your work life experience, it all encompasses the tools that you're using to do this. So this isn't just you going and making a copy of the BFRO's website, only you're pinning it on a map. This is way more than that.
I appreciate you highlighting that, and bringing me back down to the ground for a second, so I remember to explain things. You're right. I have been doing this for a very long time, and that's one of my motivations, is to share the way that I look at things and start to understand. I think GIS is a great way to understand the world in general. You use GIS every day, whether you know it or not. I mean, DoorDash is GIS. Those guys knowing the route to get to your house. I mean, think about it. They're tying your order to a restaurant, to what location they need to bring your order to. That is GIS. Emergency services is GIS. Farming, forestry, you name it. You probably touch GIS in so many different ways throughout, even logistics. How did your groceries get to the grocery store? GIS. So it's a lot of different things that people might not even realize what framework is behind that, and it's all GIS. It's a really great field, and I think it can. Getting back to Bigfoot, I think it can help us discover new ways to look at things. So through the project, I really, really, really hope to show that to people in a way that is entertaining, interesting, informative, and constructive, right? I want people to be able to take this information, use it, and feel like they're along on the adventure with me. And when I come up with new maps, for example, that's me having a new thought and putting it into an Instagram post and putting it out to share with everyone. So they don't always happen as frequently as I'd like, but I won't put something out just as filler either. It's very important to me for what I publish, what I put out there, to be quality and useful. So yeah, that's a little bit about the background of the project and why hopefully it's useful for everyone. And again, I'll add to that. If anybody has any feedback, there's a link on the website. They can message me on Instagram, anything like that. I'll do my best to get back to everyone. And I'm always open for ideas, feedback, you name it. I'm from New York. You're not going to offend me. So I've got a thick skin. And I'm grateful to be on the adventure, and hopefully we get there and we find Bigfoot through the project or through something that I put out there. I hope it helps in the least. I hope it's just part of it. So
$1.99, folks. $1.99 for this app, and help keep this guy doing what he's doing, because I honestly think that he is on a current path that is going to open our eyes to some things that, when we hear these different accounts, these reports by people, if you listen to Sasquatch Chronicles or you listen to any of the other Bigfoot shows that are out there, and you're hearing about these experiences that are taking place in, whether it be Utah or Oregon or Northern California or Midwest in Michigan or over in Ohio, it's going to let you be able to understand how that's possible. Because for the longest time, people thought Bigfoot was if it was real, it was a West Coast problem. you know.
Oh, to the contrary, my friend.
Yeah, it's all over the place. So I'm going to shut up. Go get that app. It's $1.99. It's going to be the best $1.99 app you ever paid for. Help keep this guy doing what he's doing. I'm going to shut up now, and we're going to share the screen, and you're going to get into your stuff.
Oh, we're going on this adventure together, Eric. So I'm going to do my best Bob Ross and paint the picture of a map here. This is a first for me, so please be kind. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited to dive into a map. This is it's going to be a lot of fun. Oop, there we go. Okay, can you see? I'm going to move you over into another screen here. We've got infinite screens. Oh no! All right, there we go. All right. So can you see everything okay? Is it coming through? Excellent.
Looks good.
So, all right. So from the top, what we've got is we're going to start with the software that we're in. It's called ArcMap, and it's made by Esri, the Environmental Science Research Institute. And they're a private company that has all of the GIS offerings that you can imagine, right? They're in every industry. And from military all the way down to education, municipalities, the corporate world, and myself at the bottom of the list there. So what we're looking at in the map is all the stuff that we can analyze and take and derive conclusions from. So we've got a lot of environmental data from the green infrastructure data set that Esri put out there, but added to that map, we've got our layers here on the side, and just like a pizza, everything on top is exactly how you need to think of these layers. The way they're ordered is the way they're going to be drawn on the map. I say that to my coworkers, anybody that asks me to make a map and ask me specific things to have on it. I just say, think of it like a pizza and tell me the toppings you want, and whatever you list first is what you're going to see. So it draws that way on the map. And what we got is the Bigfoot trail locations. And these are trailheads that I put on there with Bigfoot sightings within, I think it was like a 3-mile radius. Then we've got the actual Michigan Bigfoot sightings here in orange. It might be hard to see until we zoom in. I've included hiking trails so we can see an additional corridor and maybe see where some of these sightings start to make sense when you put environmental data into context. And then we've got the coolest part of the map tonight that I can't wait to focus on, and that is the least cost pathway connectors. And this is what these are segments from the entire network of connectors between all the wildlife hubs. But the distinction is that these connectors are within a quarter mile of a Bigfoot report from our database. What that means is, to me, that this is the network in red on the map that Bigfoot most likely travels throughout the state of Michigan. And at this extent, the points draw a lot larger, so they cover up a lot of these trails. But when I turn off the points, you'll see here when it decides to redraw in a second. And there's a lot of data here, so it's going to take a second. But while it's redrawing, what you're going to see now are all the red areas on the map. When you zoom in, those are actual corridors that that Bigfoot could theoretically travel. So how I would use that in the field, if I were, Eric, where can you help me direct me to just about where I need to zoom in for lake monster?
Okay, so if you would go down into the lower left quadrant, maybe inch in and an inch up from the border.
Inch in, inch up, like right here?
There. A little more in. It should be in that box, sir.
I'll tell you what, here's what we can do. I'll turn off these habitat corridors by between this, and I will add a nice base map so we can actually see what we're talking about here. A topo map will do. At this extent, it should draw pretty quick. So that way we can have a little context with where we're working through here.
Okay.
this is all the kind of stuff that actually, I mean, it's kind of fun. It's like we're working on a project together to find Bigfoot corridors. I like this a lot.
Absolutely. That's cool.
So it does take a second to draw. And you can see when the little globe is spinning down here is drawing. So, and if it doesn't, there we go. So here's the corridors.
So we're looking for Dowagiac, Michigan.
Dowagiac. Let's see. There's Kalamazoo here.
South. Go south. A little bit more to your left.
Here it is. Dowagiac. Perfect. Okay, so this will zoom in.
Yep. There's okay, so you see those lakes up there that are all intertwined in your orange lines there?
Yes.
Those should be the sister lakes.
Excellent. I'm going to turn on the Bigfoot sightings again. I had those turned off just to show the red. But now we're going to start to see in a second when I refresh the map just what the sighting situation looks like around these lakes if it decides to cooperate. And with my luck, just because we're recording, it's going to freeze or something. But there we go. I just need to move the map. So here you can see, I'll highlight them so you can actually see them pretty well. The Bigfoot sightings will now turn a nice shade of bright blue. So there's 1, 2, 3 in between the sister lakes there, and there's a nice network of where they likely traveled. And you can kind of see it's pretty interesting. They can make a whole loop here. Bigfoot could have come right down this trail or this way or up and around. It gives you an idea of like what between the sightings looks like.
Right.
That's just
now my guess is that on the regular app, if you were to select one of those three, probably the one closest to the lake, that would be a report from 1964, probably June 3rd, 1964.
I have the map ready, so let's see. I think if I remember, you said it was over here, and these are the sightings, right? Dowagiac. So which one were you looking at, Eric?
I would imagine
any one of these.
Probably the one closest to the lake. 1964. That is the Dewey Lake Monster.
Oh, and it doesn't want to go to the website, but that's the Dewey Lake Monster.
Yep.
Right there. And also 64, June of 64. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll jump back into the map. And I don't know if you want to see anything else about the Dewey Lake Monster, but if we go back out to the full extent, maybe we can look at some of the hot spots.
Absolutely.
That we were talking about pre-show. Sure. So one of the hot spots.
I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating that you came into this, you created this map without knowing anything about the Dewey Lake Monster or where it happened. Yet those orange lines that we're looking at right now, those are a result of what?
Those are pulled out from the least cost pathway connectors entire data set over the state of Michigan, and those are the wildlife corridors, including, people are going to say, oh, they go across the lake, but that is because it includes waterfowl and like any type of wildlife, otters, waterfowl, even deer swim across lakes. So what those are is that network, any of the segments that were within a quarter mile of any Bigfoot sighting. So these, the way it draws a loop like that is because they're all, this may be one segment here, right? This loop, and then it may shoot off. This may all be part of the same corridor. So if it was part of the same, I didn't cut it. If it was all one feature, I extracted the whole feature where the line started and where the line stopped. No matter which way it twisted and turned, because to me, it's important to show the full context of where that entire corridor connects to, because logically, what I want to display is what happens between these sightings. And if I clipped it to what I thought made sense, then we're not seeing the full picture of what is linked by the way that they've created these connectors. So that's what I'm trying to display here. And I'm glad you asked that question, because you might see this offshoot here and wonder, like, why does this display, since it's not intersecting a sighting, and it's part of this entire feature that twists and turns through here, and it may have the same resistance value. It may just continuously connect. So I want people to be able to derive from looking at this the entire corridor that Bigfoot may use to travel, based on where it was actually observed, right?
Which makes
I hope it makes sense.
It does. I mean, because basically what it's showing is the most logical path of continuity for wildlife to travel in that area, in being in an area that they're going to be the safest, not out in the open. And, you know, if something is 7 to 8 foot tall, anywhere from 5 to 700 or 800 pounds, and it needs to eat protein to some extent to continue to survive, it would make sense that it would be traveling along the same corridor that most of the animals in that area are traveling. And that it's amazing to me that those 3 sightings are literally fall on that line.
Can't make it up, right? This is just how the data lays and what I'm able to extract. That's what's important to communicate, is that none of this is all independently sourced. It's from a third party, and all this really is intended to do is put more information at the fingertips and display another way to look at things, like I was saying before. So
very cool. Very cool.
This map doesn't want to cooperate with me at the moment. Let's see what's going on here. The software is freezing. I think this may be a result of using all the memory on my computer today.
Yeah, that could be.
So I'm going to restart this. I'm going to close it out.
Sure.
Restart the whole software here. But while we're waiting, I should say, I can talk more to, I guess, some of the hot spots in Michigan while we're waiting on this. And what I've done is prepare a few other maps. Let me find them on Canva here. I just took some screenshots and put them into just a display here. So one of the things about Michigan that I focus on, again, is the map you talked about, Michigan Bigfoot Byways. But I've also highlighted all the hiking trails where sightings occurred within 1 mile of a trail. And so that's where you see a yellow dot that has occurred in the UP up here, which has got one of the biggest veins of green infrastructure running straight through the center of it and right down into the mitten, as you guys like, as I've learned, everyone likes to say. Into the
now,
main
the thing that strikes me,
Michigan.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the thing that strikes me as being very odd about the travel from the upper peninsula to the lower peninsula, that's separated by the Mackinac Bridge. So I'm wondering how these things are migrating from the upper peninsula to the lower peninsula. You know, it'd be a hell of a swim. And, you know, I'm not trying to get anybody in feathers in a tuft, because I know that there are a lot of reports out there of these things swimming. and we don't have any idea what their capabilities are as far as the length of time they could be in the water and swim. That's one of the largest bridges in the U.S. Longest. It'd be a hell of a swim. Are they coming across at night? Are they migrating across the underneath, using the structure of the bridge underneath? I have no idea.
What's interesting about that is, and like you're saying, it's not just Bigfoot we're talking about here. That's a documented wildlife corridor from the data set. So that's a really good question. Is other wildlife using that as well? Like, how are they using it? Are they swimming? Does it have anything to do with the infrastructure? Maybe it provides them little checkpoints to get across and kind of hang on to each piling as they get across, or who knows, right?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's very odd. I mean, again, not just for Bigfoot, but any of the creatures native to the state of Michigan in the Upper Peninsula.
Right. We can zoom in a little further here once this is done drawing. But I agree. I think it's one of the more unexplainable pieces of the data set that without going there and understanding what's happening, it raises more questions than answers, right? I imagine there's an island out
at this point, yes. That island off to the right hand side, that's Mackinac Island.
Okay.
Beautiful place. If you haven't been there, I highly recommend going there. There's the only automotives. Yeah, the only automotives on there are emergency vehicles. So
cool. Actually, it's on my list.
Kind of like going back in time.
I think that's pretty cool. So that's a great question, and sometimes that's what happens with the data set too. It might raise more questions than answers, right? But that might spark somebody to go figure out what's happening.
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's a great thing if you're critical of the data set and asking questions, not taking things at face value, even though it's part of a bigger study. That doesn't mean it's perfect, right? I think that's great that you touched on that, because this is a very interesting scenario that we're looking at on the map. You've got a corridor. Like I said, there's waterfowl included in wildlife, right? So that may be one of the things that you're seeing a byproduct of in the data set. It's all wildlife, also including marine wildlife. So that might be maybe a little misleading or not quite correct, but I will point out, if we look at this and try to understand the context further, which I think this is great that we're going through maps like this, because they don't just give you all the answers. They also provide a way to analyze things. So if we look in further detail, the sighting is onshore, and there are other corridors that are likely part of the same corridor here. That's just probably part of the same line. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Bigfoot swam across or walked across the bridge, but that corridor is linked to another one, just in terms of the GIS feature itself, just the way the line was drawn and created. So you have to also, like I was saying, take context into what's going on in the map as well. And this is a great example. I mean, we can say, all right, this sighting is onshore. Let's focus more on what's going on down here, because I don't need to don my snorkel and go look for Bigfoot out in the lake. You know what I mean? So,
right.
No, I think that's a great observation, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I've had a few people ask that. Like, I see Bigfoots out in the bay in San Diego, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of reasons those points show up in obscure places as well. People's phones might be inaccurate. The way they submit it, they might. This is a great thing about maps to speak about, where if you're zoomed out, your accuracy only increases when you zoom in, right? The scale at this extent is a large scale. So when you click over here, and you might think you'll be clicking on the land, you could be off by hundreds of feet, if not thousands of feet, because you're at such a far extent. But when you zoom in, and the scale up here, right now we're at 1 unit equals 3,800,000 units, which is basically 1 inch equals 3.8 million inches, to put it into terms. So when you zoom in, I'll zoom in on one of the hot spots so we can kind of figure out where we're going to go look for Bigfoot together. Up here, when you zoom in, you'll notice that now this scale is a lot smaller, and the further you zoom in, the more 1-to-1 it becomes. 1 inch equals 1 inch, or 1 foot equals 1 foot. So keep that in mind when you're looking at maps or looking at the website, because you can certainly pull different conclusions out. I'll pull up the big map, the website map, the actual project map here to make this point, and then we'll get back to the software. But when you get to this full extent here, it must be my computer's being slow, not cooperating. Don't embarrass me, HP. Come on. When you look at this extent, you might really draw different conclusions about what's going on in different areas when you look, because things look so much closer together. And that has a lot to do with the way symbology draws, the way distance is preserved in the map, and things like that. So just a sidebar on how to really understand maps, and why the extent is very important when you're trying to digest what you're looking at, and understanding the scale is very, very important on a map. So a professorial moment. I apologize. So.
No, you're fine. So like out there by the island, you had that one orange line that was going out towards the island there.
Yeah.
That could be just the result of somebody submitting a sighting via your website and having not scrolled in close enough on the map, and just
that it could be one of the scenarios. That red line that goes out into the lake, though, is actually not part of the database. It's part of the infrastructure data that was published by Esri. So
okay.
I think most likely that has something to do with marine wildlife is the most logical explanation that I can think of. Because there might be like bridge development, or you never know what they're going to do development wise. So I think they just included in the study even water bodies that where they had values for wildlife traveling.
All right, let's hit some hot spots.
Yeah. So here I'm going to turn off this this habitat by betweenness importance, and I'm going to turn back on the topo map here, so we know what we're looking at. And this messed me up last time, so this might be just one hotspot we get to, but I'm going to let that draw. And what this is going to show is, I've got the hiking trails on there. The topo map will show elevation. It will show culture. So is it a state park that we're looking at? Is it a forested area? Is it a wetland? All those types of things we can derive from the topo map. And if the map wants to cooperate, there we go. Now we can start to see the full context of what's happening here in between sightings. So we have a whole network of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sightings, and then one down here in the map that maybe we won't focus on in a little bit, but they're all centering around the state park here, which I'll zoom in a little further so we can start to really understand. And this is a fun part, because this is like e-scouting. How are we going to go find where we want to do our study?
Yeah.
And clearly my next thing on the list for the Bigfoot Mapping Project is a faster computer. So please go out, buy the app. Email me if you feel like making Any donations?
Give them that email address and your PayPal and your Venmo.
Yeah, here's my PayPal, here's my Venmo. I take Zelle. Geez, that's funny.
Back in early December, I decided it was time. I needed something more than my hand-me-down laptop that I got back from my daughter after she graduated college. And I found a friend of my son who is very good with computers. He built me a screaming machine for under $600. And
I'm jealous.
It's a workhorse. He did a great job, Parker Hurley, and you did a great job. This is a firehouse. So, I definitely feel the pain. I was running.
Yeah, it's like myself. Okay. And this data is very, very heavy, right? It's ArcMap. Believe it or not, this is 32-bit software, so it's a 64-bit machine, but it's 32-bit software, so it just is slow. They do have a new software out called ArcGIS Pro, which the price tag on it reflects that it's professional for sure. So I'm still operating with what'll get me by, and I'm not going to complain about that ever. I do enjoy the software. I've used it for a very long time. I mean, it is great, but there are some downsides to older software. So, but now that we've got it zoomed in and we've had a nice sidebar, and hopefully my fundraiser went well, I'll let you know after the episode. We've got the Craig Lake State Park, and I'm not familiar with Michigan at all. So perhaps you know about the Ottawa National Forest and the Craig Lake State Park.
I know the Ottawa Forest, but I'm not familiar with the state park.
Okay. It looks like to me, just from where I was zooming in at the map at a glance, we've got a great network here where it's connecting two hubs, clearly. And we've also got a hiking trail that also links all the way over to the other sightings we saw that were on the shore of the lake there as well. So I mean, this is a great example of how putting everything into context can help you link the area between sightings, where if you didn't have this on map here, you might not be aware that this hiking trail network exists, and you might not be able to find a logical way to connect the coast here, this network of sightings. How does Bigfoot get all the way over? Well, there's a trail right here linking, and look at this. He's been sighted here and then in the forest and completely right along that trailway pretty much. So
yeah,
I think just one example of how GIS can put a lot of different information into context for sure. I'll revert back to you, Eric, and see if are there any other areas that you would like to look at?
For myself, about mid-lower peninsula, around the Huron-Manistee National Forest.
Okay.
Like I said before, 10 minutes before we went on air, a gentleman outside my house working on another house said 1972 he saw one in the Huron-Manistee National Forest. We talked about my son. He was on one of my episodes. He was staying the weekend in the Huron-Manistee near Tippy Dam, and sure as shit, they had eye shine outside their front door. I personally 3 years ago did a kayak trip down the river in the Huron-Manistee. And that night it was a night from hell because all of my Amazon bought equipment failed miserably. But while we were sitting at the fire, we heard 3 owls, and there was something unremarkable about the sound of the owls. It was kind of a
like almost an imitation of it.
Yeah, it very much sounded like somebody imitating, but there was one directly across the river from where we were at. There was one that responded that was quite a ways off behind us, and then one that was up ahead of us, and it went in the same pattern. The one across, the one behind, the one in front. It continued to do that multiple times, and all three of us sitting at the fire, it was like, that doesn't sound like, it sounds like something sounding like an owl.
Right.
And then, you know,
weird.
that stopped. But there were three of us sitting at the fire. Okay. So imagine it's night, you have a fire burning and you have three silhouettes sitting at the fire, and we hear three owls. All right. And then one guy, he got pissed drunk and went, and he decided to go get in his hammock. And then there were just two of us. And shortly after that, after the third guy had went to lay down, then we started hearing wood knocks, but it was two wood knocks. You heard whack, whack. And then a little while later, you heard whack, whack. And I started thinking to myself, it's like, you know, everybody's always trying to figure out, what are these, you know, what are they communicating? How are they communicating? What's making these noises? And I'm like, I started thinking, it's like, oh shit, are they counting? Because when there were three of us at the fire, we had three owl noises, and now there's only two of us, and we're hearing two wood knocks, you know?
So they're letting maybe each other know.
I have no idea, but it, you know, it kind of makes sense. You know, how many are in the area? You know, how many are we seeing? Who knows?
Right.
But later that night, after we let the fire burn down, we went to, the other two of us, we went to get in our hammocks, and, you know, I fell out of my hammock, tore the mosquito netting out of it. It was a horrible, horrible night. But as I'm laying there trying to, and it got so cold that night, it wasn't supposed to get that cold, and I underpacked. I literally had pairs of socks on my hands, and I had a gaiter pulled up over my face, and I even put my damn sunglasses on to keep my eyeballs from getting too cold.
I've been there.
It was ridiculous. But as I was laying there, you know, wishing for death, you know, the river's running, and it's fairly high. You can hear the water running. And then I start hearing splashes. Only these were the type of splash that sounds like something going bloop, psh, bloop, psh, you know, like it was like a large something or other. Now, I've heard fish jump in the water plenty of times while I'm fishing. It didn't sound like fish breaching the water, getting bugs off the top of the water. I don't think there was, you know, a school of mink that decided to go diving.
Right.
But I'm hearing splashes in the water, as if large rocks were being thrown into the river. And, you know, I mean, basically I stayed up until, the light of day started to crack through the clouds. And then I was able to get about 45 minutes to an hour of sleep. But I was completely unnerved that entire evening.
I could, I mean, you probably felt surrounded and observed, and
there was a point where the mountain, I forget the brand name of the reconstituted food, mountain, what Mountain House or whatever it is, the food, it was wanting to evacuate. And I was like, there is no way in hell I am going to go out and dig a hole, 25 yards from camp and have this family of Bigfoot sitting there laughing at me while I'm leaned up against a tree. Wasn't going to happen.
I can't say as I blame you. That'd be quite a bit unnerving. Golly.
But, like I said, my son had an experience there. I've had an experience there. The gentleman outside my house today had an experience there. And, there's a number of sightings right in that area.
You can't make that up. I mean, running into the guy that was like, I had a sighting, and then it corresponds right to the network, the area that your son had the sighting, like you were saying. It's just insane.
Yep.
Do you know where that was, or do you want to look at where that was?
It was in the Huron-Manistee National Forest. It was near Tippy Dam.
Oh, I see it. Like you were saying, towards the middle of the state, up here. This is the Tippy Dam right here.
Okay.
So we can zoom in there. Voila. Come on. Well, of course, it doesn't want to cooperate. Golly, it's giving me a hard time. I think it's maybe because I'm sharing my screen and going through everything.
Probably, yeah.
But this extent might just be just as good. Now we kind of know the area. But Tippy Dam is pretty much right where this sighting was here.
Yep.
And then you've got a whole network. So sighting here, you have a whole hotspot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, that's within a reasonable radius of each other. All connected by the national forest, the roads, the hiking trails, and the corridors.
Yep.
Very interesting. And really the river as well.
It's really kind of I don't know, the surreal is the right word to use. It's funny that there's a confirmation that I'm seeing by this map. You know, what are the odds that a bunch of people who have decided to report seeing Bigfoot and are making it up would decide to make these reports that actually fall within the data points that show
right? There's
literally a good reason for it to be there.
That's one of my favorite things about this data set is that the corridors are almost, I would say 95%, 98, 99% accurate as far as it's definitive. The wildlife travels there. And who these sightings were, reported from an app, probably, zooming in on the map and putting the point right where they had the sighting. Nobody, aside from now, if they're, after they watch this show, had any idea where these corridors exist. And I have not shared the full data set of the entire network. All I've highlighted and shared publicly is the red corridors that intersect or have a Bigfoot sighting nearby. Mm-hmm. Nobody else knows where this network is, right? So to see these orange dots correspond, almost every single one hits a connector, right?
Yeah.
It is uncanny to see that. To me, that is a confirmation that Bigfoot is traveling where other wildlife travels. It's a confirmation, just like you're saying. There's no
makes
doubt.
Perfect sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And when you look even further outside the national forest, everywhere you see a sighting, it pretty much hits or is within a quarter mile of a least cost pathway, which means that's the most logical place wildlife is going to be and going to be traveling. You do see, I will point out the one anomaly in the map because I know you're going to have a viewer that's like, yeah, but there's an orange dot with nothing near it. And, that could go down a lot of ways. Did somebody really see something? Bigfoot's smart. It doesn't always have to follow a wildlife corridor. But I think looking at this map, almost 100% of them, save for the one in the map right now, is within a quarter mile of a least cost pathway. I think that's really, really informative.
I mean, for me, and I'm a believer in these things. I'm firmly rooted in the fact that they do exist, and that there's nothing unnatural about the idea that they would exist. I mean, to me, it makes perfect sense that they're there. Now, if you scroll directly across the state to the east, staying right in the same part of the state, but go due east.
It's actually cooperating with me. I shouldn't have pointed that out because now I'm going to jinx myself. I'm sure I'm going to see another additional cluster of those orange lines, because on that side of the state, the Huron National Forest has a ton of sightings as well. So maybe I should zoom out if it wants to cooperate. Or not. I'll tell you what. For ease of illustration, I'm going to pull up the website. So here, you're referring to the Huron National Forest up here. We were up here.
Right.
Now you're referring to here.
Yeah. And look at all those sightings.
There, right? A ton. I mean, just a snapshot. I don't think it's a coincidence that national forests have tons of sightings, and at a glance, you can actually see. I think this is a. Glad we're looking at this because I can fit the whole thing in the map, in the screen. This is actually the web application I was talking about earlier. But what it shows you is a good way to understand what's going on in the map. The historical sightings are color coded, so you can see a sighting. So this is an actual visible sighting, the yellow Bigfoots in the map. An audible, which would be maybe a wood knock or howl, would be the speaker symbol here, right? Like an audio. Track sign, footprint. So, and then there's maybe it just isn't a defined type. Somebody didn't fill it out, or the sighting information I had wasn't clear, right? So
yeah.
If I want, one of the things that I personally look for, and I've filtered out before, is all the track sign. To me, that is a direct link to the creature itself. So I've actually made for myself maps where I've just looked at where are the footprints, right? Because that to me is the creature left something behind. So if you just look at the blue points in the map, now you can see, even if you disregard anything else, you can see Bigfoot was here, here in the center, here in the national forest, here in this hot spot, here. Look at this. There's a bunch of footprints in Manistee, like you were saying, right?
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit at a glance what's happening here. And this makes sense because it's, wow, I kind of want to go check this area out after zooming in. This looks pretty interesting. Footprints and audibles all in this whole area. Right off the Little Manistee. I bet you there's a lot of salmon and trout running through that river. Is that right?
I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah. On a pretty regular basis. Yeah.
This is one of the places I would go right here. Just because there's such a concentration of footprints. Just looking at that on the map, that's definitely where I would go. One of the first places I would want to put on my checklist for looking for Bigfoot in Michigan, for sure.
You know, and I've made friends with several investigators, researchers, if you want to call them that, in the state of Michigan. And you know, if you go back in right in between the Huron Manistee and the Huron Forest, you're going to see two lakes, Higgins Lake and Houghton Lake, and those are both pretty well scouted by these Michigan researchers. And if you look, there's a number of sightings there as well. Yeah,
I mean, I'm just going to switch base maps because I'm not familiar with this area. I want to see what it looks like. And I might debut one of the coolest features about the Bigfoot map that I think people might miss. I don't know if you've seen it either, Eric, but we have 3D.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. So it'll zoom.
Oh, it is down there. I did not know that.
Yeah. So it'll zoom right to where you are in the 2D map. They talk to each other, and all the points, you just right click and tilt, and now you're in the map in 3 dimensions. So it's great for areas where there's mountains. You can see the view shed. You can see areas zoom in and out and really get a lay of the land. Look at all this. Look at the different view you get in the 3D as well. So,
and all those colored dots are sightings.
That's right. So it's crazy when you look.
That's a different perspective when you're looking at it, for kind of from a south to north aspect.
Right. And you can rotate and start to look around.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. It almost puts you, it's just such a different way of looking at it. 2D doesn't always give you the best perspective, right? So this shows you all the way to the horizon, what Bigfoot's got going on, what's happening in the area. And when you start to look at it this way, it looks so much more in a different context, or just looking at things literally from a different angle.
Yeah, can
change your whole perspective, pun intended, on what's happening. Because look, you can now. I'm thinking, okay, look at what's happening. This is such a dense area of sightings.
That's crazy, because when you look at a map from top looking down, like when you're
like this here,
just look, Michigan's got a lot of sightings, and they're kind of piled on top of each other in some areas and stuff like that. But when you go to that 3-dimensional map and you look at it from the perspective of, say, being in a specific county and looking out across the surrounding counties and, what's north of you, what's south of you, that's a little more stunning, to be honest with you, than looking at the regular map.
I agree. That's why I added it. And I don't think enough people use it, or even maybe know about it. But you can, so if you right click and you want to look from this point, and I just want to zoom around, I can start to get, a different understanding of what's going on in that whole area, the 360, just by, scrolling around. And then if I want to get back to true north, I can just click this here, and it'll bring me right back around. So sound effects included. But yeah, there's a lot of hidden little tools in the Bigfoot Mapping Project web app here that I think people might not be aware of, and they might not take advantage of. But yeah, there's a lot.
Do me a favor. Let's go to the Yankee Springs area.
Yankee Springs. Okay, I'm going to search for that. Yankee Springs. That's it? Township?
Yes. Yep.
All right. We're on our way to Yankee Springs. Okay. You can zoom out a little. There we go. It's kind of an island of, I was like, are they going to draw?
So I was made privy to some recordings of suspected Sasquatch in and around the area of Yankee Springs. They would not be specific as to the area. All they said, it was in or around Yankee Springs. Okay. So judging from this map, I would suggest that the area that they were talking about was south of Yankee Springs. I wish that I had permission to add that audio to my show.
That would be so cool.
I've asked. The gentleman that provided me with it was allowed to share it with me, but I was not allowed to make it public. And I will tell you this, if you have listened to Ron Moorhead's Sierra Sounds, the audio that was captured in this location is every bit as good, if not slightly better.
Really?
Just as intense, and the samurai chatter that Matt Moneymaker had coined the phrase is very, very evident as well as wood knocks, rock clacking. But the chatter that goes on in this area was astounding. So I would, again, I wish like hell I could get permission to air it.
I'm jealous.
But it literally is like if you got bonus footage from the Sierra Sounds on a DVD that wasn't released anyplace else. And
I was just listening.
Yeah, it was that good.
I was just listening to Cliff and Bobo today at work, and Cliff was talking about the Sierra Sounds, as a matter of fact. And he was like, as far as he understands, that was the only recording that sounded like that, where Bigfoot are stringing essentially different sounds together to communicate things like words, etc.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's such a weird, like you were saying, speaking of synchronicities, I had been listening to that, and he was imploring people in the podcast. He was like, I wish I could hear another example of it. Man, I hope you one day get the permission to air that. People are probably thirsty for that kind of information, and
it would be nuts. Yeah.
Man,
and I've got the audio sitting on my computer, and I can't do anything with it.
Well,
I wish
I
that
applaud
I
your
could,
integrity. I really do, because that takes some a lot of self-control, I'd imagine. But that's just, I'm jealous. I hope one day you get the permission to share that, because I'd love to hear it. I pulled up the one more. I'm just making sure I can get to where I want to get down here. I see that we're talking about this area right here. So I'm actually going to pull up the network while we're talking and look at the Yankee Springs area Bigfoot network. So this would be, it's just south of, let me get back to the map here. Yankee Springs. I want to make sure I'm telling you right. Yankee Springs. Zoom out here. Okay. So Yankee Springs that looks like Yankee Springs right about there. So that would be the whole network.
Which jives perfectly with.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Ooh, I'm zooming in now. Yeah, that is quite. I'm just making sure I'm in the right area. Let me get the coordinates here.
Strikes me as being.
The coordinates and put it right on the map. Just so we can see it here. The point on the map, XY.
In what you were doing in this, anybody who uses your desktop or your mobile app can do very similar things on their own.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely, yes. You can, like, for example, I'll actually do that in the map here. Let's see, I got the coordinates. I just searched before for Yankee Springs. So it's actually a little bit more user-friendly. It's a lot simpler, a lot faster than the software I use. It's not nearly as memory heavy and not a memory hog at all. But yeah, you can plug in coordinates here. You can use your current location in the map. You can zoom into a coordinate right there. So absolutely, yes. Those are the coordinates I just plugged in. And I just Googled that. What's the coordinates for Yankee Springs Township? And it brought me right there. So yeah, this is meant to be, you can't do everything we're doing in this software here, because this is a desktop
Right.
software. But yes, you can do most. And we were looking over here. So there's Yankee Springs Township. I'm going to flash it on the screen one more time. So yeah, there's an interesting network and the hiking trail as well. But these are audibles. I don't have them symbolized as audibles in the map, this particular map, but Yankee Springs was down here, and we've got a couple audibles, 1, 2, and then on this map as well, we've got, this would be an audible, and this would be an audible. So yeah, I think now I want to go to Yankee Springs and hear something.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that this map can be used, and like you pointed out, anybody can go to the I'll just show you how to get there. www.bigfootmap.com and just click the logo. And I made it real easy to get a hold of me. You can submit a report here, and you can also contact me if you like to leave any feedback. It'll bring you to a link, and it'll ask you how you want to email me. And if you submit a report, it'll bring you right to the form. This is the standard form I use here to get a sighting into the map. You can attach pictures, video. You can describe your encounter, list your website, and you have plenty. You have 5,000 characters to describe what you saw. I do require an email and a disclaimer, but I don't publicize anyone's email or anything like that. And the disclaimer is basically, don't put anything up there that you shouldn't be, please. I don't want to have to deal with it, but if you do, I've got your email at least, and I'll report it if I have to. I don't want to though. So,
and going back to our first conversation back when and that was actually February of 2022. Mm-hmm. So
wow.
It's been about a year and a half almost since we did our first episode. We had a conversation as far as there was intentional latency on your part as far as the adding a report to the map, because we are both in the camp of being no kill as far as these creatures are concerned. And we didn't want, or you didn't want anybody to be able to use this application to get boots on the ground any quicker than they needed to after a fresh sighting. And I think that's something that's worth noting. I know at one point with someone I was associated with, a very nice guy, but he was afraid that your information was going to be leading people to,
I remember that,
to the point of where somebody would be able to get boots on the ground rather quickly using the information from these sightings and then potentially kill one of these things. So I think that intentional latency is very well placed in this, what you're doing.
I don't understand what's happening here. It's there we go. It wasn't quite my internet was not cooperating for a moment. I apologize for that.
Oh, it's no problem.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear people are concerned, but I hopefully mitigate that, because that's the last thing I want to happen. I just talked about this the other day with the guys from A Flash of Beauty. I would like this information to be used for conservation purposes and to protect Bigfoot, right? Not to make him a target, make it a target, make the species a target. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's still the case. I do highlight newer sightings on the map, but there is a little bit of a delay. So that way people can't get right out there. And not that I think they'd have very much success. People have tried, but
we're batting 0 for 1,000 here.
Yeah. So but still, I don't want to be. If that were to happen, I wouldn't want to play a part in that. That's for sure. So,
Scott, we're coming up on 2 hours. Again, just it's always wonderful talking to you. You're the project you're doing is so valuable, and I mean, just from the standpoint of an enthusiast, who's delving into this not nearly as many years as I have, or some, I'm not a boots on the ground investigator. All right. I'm not out traipsing through the woods trying to find tracks and all that. My job is to sit and talk to people that do. And I'm okay with that. I mean, but what your service does is, I mean, just like I was saying earlier, it's a pocket pal. I can pull my phone out and, a buddy of mine saying, "Oh, I wonder if there's any sightings around blah, blah, blah." And it's like, I could tell you, like in less than 2 minutes, I could tell you, yeah, there are,
right.
Where are there not sightings? So, just keep doing what you're doing, man, because I think this is a very valuable tool. And, I've got some, like I said, I've got some researchers that I'm friendly with in the Michigan area. And if they're not using your app, they need to be, because one in particular, I can tell you, he's kind of like, he doesn't like the newfangled stuff. He'd rather get his boots on the ground and get muddy and
I get that
and all that. But man, this is a hell of a way to put yourself in a position to change the odds.
Make the most of that boots on the ground time. You know what I mean? Put a little bit different way of figuring out where you want to go.
Absolutely. So I'm going to challenge you.
Okay. I'm ready for this.
I have two things that I would love to see you tackle. Okay. And one being, because of your most recent experience out in the Sedonas, is, and I think we talked about this at one point via message. I was really interested in seeing. I know you did a map that overlaid known cave systems with the Bigfoot hotspots throughout the country. And those have lined up rather well. And of course that makes sense. And I'm sure your byways probably line up very consistent with that as well. But the thing that really interested me, and it is now becoming even more topical than it was when I suggested this, is I would be very interested in if you can find, and I think I might have provided you a website with UFO sightings from the early 1900s through modern day.
I do remember you sending that through, I think. Yep. And
if not, I can dig it up again. I would be very interested. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Bigfoot are the watchdogs for ETs. That's not what I'm getting at. But I'm curious that is there a correlation between the areas where Bigfoot are found or sighted, reported, and these UFO sightings?
I don't know the answer to that. Maybe I can have a different an opinion by the time we talk again.
And I would appreciate that. And the other thing would be if you could overlay a map of known nuclear sites, both nuclear power plants and any known nuclear military installations.
Interesting. Probably. I'd have to find that data set, but I'm sure it's out there.
I would
probably not all the military ones, though. I bet
probably not. You'd be able to find some of them, but not all of them for sure. Right. But I'd be really interested to see if there can be any kind of correlation drawn between those as well.
Well, we'll find out. Nuclear and UFOs are my top two maps. I think I can do that. At the very, I'll probably just send them to you first.
Okay.
And then let you have premier access to those. And then with your permission, assuming you don't want to do anything with them first, I'll put them on the Instagram.
Deal. Yeah. I think that, and here's the reason I bring up the nuclear stuff is because there are several, there's one gentleman in specific, Steve Isdahl, out of Canada.
I've heard the name.
He runs a channel called howtohunt.com.
Oh, yeah.
He's a guide hunter. But he's just inundated with people sending him emails about their reports of having encounters with Bigfoot. There have been a number of them that have come from either military personnel or people who have worked in conjunction with nuclear sites that have many times had these things coming and actually breaching the security fences that they have around these places. And, I'm curious. I mean, is there a correlation to it or is this all bunk? And if there is a correlation to it, what's drawing them to it? Is it just due to placement, which your byways that you've just shown today, if they're in a position where they're like right next to or intersecting these byways, that would make sense. But if they're not, and they're showing up in that area, what's the attraction? What's the draw to it?
Right.
So
that'll be, I was just thinking, there's one sighting you reminded me of while you were saying that. And it was one that's in Antarctica, believe it or not. And it's a study. You just reminded me. For some reason, I jumped to Antarctica because of your mention of like secretive nuclear sites and the thread we were on. And I was like, Antarctica's got a lot of secrets and we do have a report there. So it just kind of was a weird connection for me. And I just was clicking on it to refresh about it. But yeah, it's, I will be happy to make those maps and share them with you.
That would be awesome. That would be amazing. Hopefully it'll be amazing. Hopefully it doesn't make me look like I'm a crackpot. So,
well,
but I got a feeling.
I got
a feeling it's gonna show something.
I think you're right. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I wonder what the radius will be for sightings or reports within a proximity to those areas, because I mean, again, like I was talking about, the extent of the map will matter at that point, because if I'm very zoomed out and it's at like a country level, it's going to look a lot more correlated than if I zoom in on each specific area.
Right.
Maybe for that map I'll put like a 10-mile radius around each point, just so people have a reference scale to understand what's going on, because I think otherwise, it kind of gets lost in the map.
The other thing for another day that would interest me is, do the known ley lines throughout the world, do those intersections of those ley lines, do they correspond with any of what you've come across? And this is coming from somebody who is, entertaining things at a much more open-minded level than the science-based thought process that you're using. But
those would be fun maps to make. So I'm not going to say no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there is a map that I made in the past that's on the Instagram where I analyze magnetic and gravity data. So that's similar to ley lines. I don't know a lot about ley lines, but I do know it has to do with the magnetic strength around the Earth, the magnetic field.
Yeah.
And what magnetic and gravity data does is it measures that, right? So the signature of what's in the crust and the magnetic strength that's in the crust, whether it's high, positive or negative, right? For example, and how strong it is in either direction, either pole. So yeah, that's on there, and that might be the closest thing I've done to ley lines. And it would be interesting. Maybe that would be a step towards what you're thinking about.
Right.
In terms of things I've already done and data that I've got available. This
Scott,
is fun.
It's been a blast with you, man. It always is.
Yeah.
I wish you didn't live that far away, because I think throwing back a couple of beers with you and
oh yeah,
and that would be a lot of fun.
My wife would be like, "Are you ever coming home?" Like,
do me a favor before we wrap this up. Let everybody know where they can find you, how to reach you, and anything you have coming up in the future that you know of.
Let's see. You can reach me. You can always find all my information at www.bigfootmap.com. Everything is there. The Instagram that I post on is called, it's just Bigfoot Mapping Project, at Bigfoot Mapping Project. The app on both app stores, iOS and Android, is Bigfoot Map, all one word. And coming up, I don't have any appearances or anything like that, or any podcasts in the near future that I'll be on. I need to get my face out there. So if anybody would like to talk, please feel free to contact me. I could use all the practice I can get. So I just appreciate folks like you, Eric, for having me on and helping me talk about the platform and giving me time to share what I'm doing. I very much appreciate it. And I hope that I'm welcome back, and I hope we have a lot to talk. I hope we have a lot to talk about next time. I know we will. Yeah. So with that, I just want to say thank you again. It's very much appreciated, and I know all the time and effort you put into your podcast. So I just want to say a big thank you for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I appreciate what you're doing. I think it has a great deal of value to people everywhere, from the enthusiasts to people that are going out there and spending their weekends or their vacations looking for these things. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed hearing from Scott Tompkins again. It's been a year and a half, and that's a little bit too long. I think we're going to have to...
I agree.
We're definitely going to have him back a little bit sooner for the next round. Hopefully he's taking me serious on these other two maps. I know I kind of spiraled out of the realm of science into some pseudoscience there at the end, but I think that we'll be surprised with the way those maps look. My gut tells me there's going to be some correlations. So, Scott, again, thank you so much, man. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Good night.